Good evening and welcome to all those councillors present and Councillor Santa online, and a particular welcome to members of the public who are with us in the gallery and online. Before we begin, I'll ask Councillor Berricky to deliver the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of all present and those watching on the webcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands in which we meet and pay our respect to the ancestors and spirits past and present. And I extend that respect to any Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people here today or watching us online.
Thank you, councillors. We've received a request from Councillor Santa to attend remotely, and also for a leave of absence from Councillor Spenceley. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Berricky. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, in 10.11, I have a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest, but if we're any debate, I'll leave the chamber.
Thank you. I also, in item 10.11, have a non-pecuniary, less than significant interest.
Madam Mayor, I have in item 10.11 a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations? This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile telephones are turned to silent during meetings of council. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. That takes us to the confirmation of minutes. Is there a mover? Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Mutton. Any discussion? All those in, I'll put the item, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We've had two requests to address council on two separate items. The first is item 10.7, affordable housing and heritage planning council priorities. There's one speaker, and for the notice of motion 11 of 2023, tree at 38 Shilcove Road, Carrabba Point. There's a speaker registered as well. Do I have a motion to open the public forum in relation to the items? Councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we open the public forum in relation to those two items and then bring the debate on those items forward.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Mutton. I'll put the that motion on those in favour. And that is carried unanimously. That then brings us to item 10.7, affordable housing and heritage planning council priorities. The registered speaker is Fiona Gracie on behalf of the Moore Conservation Group. If you would come forward, please.
Before I start, do you mind if I get some water?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. So I just want to start by saying, ideally, we'd want to see action on affordable housing, given it is a priority of all levels of government, alongside a comprehensive LGA-wide review to recognise heritage significant items and structures throughout the LGA. So speaking from the point of view of the CCG, I'm supportive of the report, which is before you tonight, to focus on affordable housing. However, I don't believe that this should be a binary decision. The issue, as I said, is that clearly there are budgetary and staffing constraints, and this is preventing both being done comprehensively in the foreseeable future. Plus, the report before the council tonight, while touching on the key issues, I feel is a little light on detailed information to allow a properly informed decision. So if I may, I'd like to suggest an alternative. And that is that consideration be given to forming an advisory reference group of key stakeholders that addresses both affordable housing and heritage at the same time, comprising representatives of both internal and external key stakeholders. Such a group would act in the best interest of the whole community and collegiately work to produce and propose recommendations to council. The advisory group would include, but not necessarily be limited to, council representatives from planning and heritage, affordable housing providers, plus community representatives with demonstrated interests and skills in heritage. The group would work collegiately, as I said before, with a focus on clearly defined reference points and act to meet achievable timelines. With regard to the budget constraints that were listed in the report, I suggest that the council representatives use the budget and the expertise to focus on the issue of affordable housing, and that the community brings its recommendations on impacts of affordable housing on the potential heritage significance items that are located nearby. This makes use of a readily available, low cost, in fact, I'd suggest no cost, working workforce. Council would then be well informed to make a decision as to why, where, how, and who benefits from any affordable housing projects and the impact that they could potentially have on heritage items. A comprehensive LGA-wide heritage review will take at least 2 to 3 years and to be satisfactorily completed. And it would appear that the budget to do this is not presently available. So I therefore would like to ask that the item tonight be deferred so that this and other constructive suggestions are considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation. Councillor Berry.
Thank you. Now I have a motion. I'd like to move that this item be deferred to a councillor briefing to be held as soon as practical.
Seconded for the motion. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh. I think there's quite a lot in the report. It's 2 conflicting priorities for council, and I think we need to have a bit more of a nuanced discussion and then have a report come back to council.
No, I have an amendment, thanks, ma'am. The council confirms its commitment to a municipal-wide comprehensive heritage review. And the second point, that the North Sydney Local Strategic Planning Statement states that our heritage review is prioritised over advancing the affordable housing policy at this point in time.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Porras.
Actually, I'll add a third point on there, that a brief report be provided on all options. On all options to help contain the costs of the review.
You take on that third item, Councillor Porras. Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, I'll just speak to that. Look, probably, I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but I thought it was timely seeing this hit my desk today. I've seen here that this has been under embargo for today, but Third Eye and Phoenix Property Investors have just announced that they are planning $130 million of affordable housing for key and essential workers in Crows Nest. This is above the new metro station. It's also a very interesting one because this particular low cost housing is going to be designated for staff that work at Royal North Shore Hospital. So it's a really interesting model. But my point is, this has just come out and there are other initiatives coming out all the time The market is on to affordable housing, so is the state government. This is a matter that's being addressed, but there's no one else lobbying to preserve our heritage homes. It was a commitment made in the previous council that we stop a scattergun approach to preserving heritage and commit to a full LGA-wide review of our heritage items and our conservation areas. That was a commitment made, this is years ago now, and no action's actually being taken on it. Affordable housing is happening. This is proof of it. And there will be other ideas. This is just one idea that's come in, but $130 million of affordable housing right in the heart of St Leonard's, walking distance to the Royal North Shore Hospital. That's a pretty good start. Options for affordable housing will come up, but if we're not having much luck with interim heritage orders, and I think it's bad practice, and I've actually started voting against them because it's very expensive and it's not an answer. It's just simply not an answer. It's very expensive. It provides certainty for no one, for those people that live in fear. Oh gosh, is someone going to slap a heritage order on my house and I'll never be able to sell it? Maybe I'll start doing work on it now, pull the windows, pull the doors out, whatever, to avoid that happening. We have a lot of uncertainty out there in the marketplace and a lot of uncertainty out there with those residents that live in what may or may not be considered heritage homes. This needs to be fixed. If we delay this for years, and I've listened to the option just put forward, and that's a nice community idea, and those things can be covered in my notice, in my notice, point through my notice of motion. But community input would also delay. If we wait another few years, another 3-5 years for this comprehensive study, how many heritage homes are we going to lose in that time? Those homes cannot be replaced. Once they're gone, they're gone. We can continue to work to provide affordable housing, but we cannot let heritage homes be destroyed because we haven't done a full-scale review of our controls. Everyone supported it happening in the last council. Councillors around this table support the preservation of our heritage items. We can't now, I disagree with Councillor Berrigan saying we need a briefing on this. We certainly need a briefing on affordable housing, but as I've just said, and I'll pass this around, you can all have a look at it. Things are happening in the affordable housing space. $130 million. And this is part of an amended plan for Hume Place at the Crows Nest Metro Overstation development. So this is a partnership with Evolve Housing, and the proposal is to designate 15% of the mixed-use development to nurses, midwives, health professional and services staff working at the nearby Royal North Shore Hospital and other local health facilities in perpetuity. This will allow health workers who are unable to find affordable rental apartments within the local government area to live close to their workplaces. So things are happening in this space. The market is responding, developers are responding, the state government is pushing this. But if we allow this...
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. After 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll just finish my sentence. If we allow this random process that we have at the moment to use heritage orders to try to preserve houses, by the time this review is done, it won't be needed because we won't have any heritage homes left.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Oh, sorry, and then, so you know, Councillor Santha, I'm coming to you.
things are happening in affordable housing that won't ring terribly well for people who have no place to live, no safe place to live. Things are not happening in affordable housing, and excuse after excuse, delay after delay. It's just not good enough. Now, I accept that affordable housing should be the mainstay of the state government. But for whatever reason, it hasn't delivered. For whatever reason, we've got people sleeping on the streets. We've got people looking for a safe place to live. And in this country, no one should be forced to live on the streets. No one should be forced to live at risk. And with the greatest of respect to the people who advocate heritage listing, affordable housing for people who are suffering now is so terribly important. I'm opposed to Councillor Gibson's amendment. I will support moving to a briefing so that our decision is well informed. But this is a serious issue. In a municipality, in a local government, that with Greenway set a course back in the 1950s to provide what was then a magnificent housing development, and what does today provide an incredibly needed housing resource. No, I'm sorry to say it, affordable housing is more important to me. Safe places for people to sleep is more important to me than is heritage listing. I would like to see this council with courage to move forward and determine what it can do to help solve the local council problem, the state government problem, the federal problem. But for God's sake, let's find a solution and not an excuse.
Thank you, Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I support Councillor Mutton and his view on this. I was particularly moved in the paper that was presented to us by the figure for the proportion of approved DAs and of housing construction in our local government area devoted to affordable social housing. I think it's just woeful. Before joining council, I heard the following figures: that in general throughout the Sydney urban area, the proportion of all housing devoted to affordable social housing was about 5%, which is a poor figure in itself. But in North Sydney, it's less than 2%. This is not only morally wrong, but bad economics. North Sydney's main industries are education and health. But by not having an effective social affordable housing policy, we're denying residential access to most of the employees in those two industries. With all the expenditure, multiplier effects, their residential presence in our LGA would provide the other small, medium businesses in our local government area. A substantial increase in our social affordable housing would be a sound business investment as well as a moral imperative. We all agree that this nation is facing a housing crisis at the lower affordable end of the market. This council must give this policy a top priority. However, when it comes to considering it against heritage preservation policy, I think it's almost like saying that apples are better than pears. I'm just wondering in a way why we have to bring the two together in juxtaposition like that. I accept that it is strongly supported by the majority of our community, that is heritage preservation, and any perusal of the minutes of our council meetings would demonstrate our strong track record in defence of preservation of heritage properties. Sadly, not always successfully. While accepting the report's recommendation that in future we give priority to social affordable housing policies, I would advise that our approach to these two important policies doesn't always have to be either or. In implementing our social affordable housing decisions, we should ensure we maintain an awareness of the desirability of maintaining our built heritage and, if necessary and possibly, accommodating in new built in new buildings, and so I would support the proposal by Councillor Beregi. I think this whole issue needs to be further considered and at a councillor briefing.
Thank you, councillor Sanders. Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, thanks to the community for the feedback on this issue. It's been significant and some excellent information received, which is really helpful. Putting a roof over your head has to be the #1 priority in this debate. You know, it is a higher priority than protecting our built heritage. There's no doubt about that. But today I was walking through the city of Sydney and I was walking through the Rocks. A magnificent place, vibrant, not because it's got high-rise residential buildings or high-rise commercial buildings, but because it's protected its heritage. So I'm uncomfortable with having to make a choice like this. Very uncomfortable. I ran on a platform of protecting our environment, our natural and built environment. So, you know, these two things are very high, even though I do rank having a roof over one's head above heritage. I believe that the state government can do a lot more than local government. And I believe indeed that federal government can do a lot more than state government. So if you like, it does cascade down to us, but there are the higher levels of government that can do more and effectively resolve this issue. So in summary, given the assault on our heritage by, in fact, those levels of government in many ways, I don't think we should be kicking this heritage can down the road. I believe that we should be starting a heritage review. And again, I'm uncomfortable at having to make a choice between these two things, which I think should be very high priorities for North Sydney Council. I believe that we should be able to manage both, and I look forward to a briefing. I do welcome that Councillor Beregi, a briefing to just properly understand why, given that both I believe are time critical, that there is this so-called need to make a choice. Our loss of heritage is an urgent crisis, as is the housing crisis. So I support an in detail briefing where we can drill down further and better understand why this choice is being put forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Brady, have you raised reply?
I'm just going to speak against the amendment and for the motion to go to a councillor briefing. Like Councillor Martin, Councillor Santa, Councillor Burke, I was entirely uncomfortable with the either or scenario and thought there must be a better way. And I don't feel that we have enough information at the moment to make that decision. And if there are other ways, we are the governing body and we can decide that other priorities can also come into play. And so that's what I would like to cover in the briefing. Both are important. We're not facing a housing crisis, we're in a housing crisis. We're actually in it. And I completely agree, a roof over your head is the #1 priority, but we shouldn't even have to be dealing with this. I think we can look at both and we can look at how council is arranging its the way it's operating to see whether we can actually prioritise both. So I will be voting against the amendment and for the motion.
On that basis, I put the amendment. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment is lost. We return to the substantive motion.
Did I ever not get a right of reply?
You don't have a right of reply in the amendment. The right of reply only goes to the substantive motion. That's the code of meeting practice. Okay, do you wish to speak to it? No, we'll put the substantive motion, Councillor Beregi and Councillor Welsh, which is to defer to a councillor briefing. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried with councillor LaFleurs against. That brings us to the next item in the public forum. It's Mr. McCoon, if you would like to come forward to address council in relation to councillor Gibson's motion number 11 of 2023. You give your name and who you represent.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name's Andrew McCowan, and I want to thank particularly Councillor Gibson for putting this item on the agenda. It concerns a very, very large tree in Shellcove Road. We live with my wife and I directly opposite the property with this big tree. I was sufficiently concerned about it that I wrote to council about 10 years ago now and pointed out the problem that if it should fall and it's sitting immediately behind the front fence, which is a brick retaining wall a bit over 1 metre high, it would bring down the power lines, it would kill anyone who happened to be passing. Lots of pedestrians walk along there because it's just around the corner to the Cremorne Point Walk. So weekends it's very, very busy indeed. And this tree, which is exceptionally large, it's a huge tree, is not stable. The wall in front of it is severely cracked and deformed. And so I asked council to please look into the matter. They did, and they sent a notice to the landowner to remove the tree and to rebuild the front fence. She refused. And so the matter went to the Land and Environment Court, where the council's legal team essentially were taken to the cleaners. They had an engineer who testified that the wall was fine, all it needed was some drainage holes in the bottom. And the council's team really had no response to this, and so the case was lost. I asked them subsequently, how could a brick wall, which is cracked from end to end and top to bottom in several places, possibly retain water? So the drainage holes that were the solution were totally redundant and have never passed a drop of water in the years since they were installed. So that's where it stayed. The wall has continued to deform. I monitor it. And I wrote again to council about a year ago, raising that. It said quite a few years have gone by. Could you please look into the matter again? I didn't hear anything for quite some time until I got a letter saying essentially that the council's tree officer had inspected it and deemed the tree to be safe. And so nothing was proposed to be done. The problem is, it's not the tree that is the problem, it's the wall. And the wall continues to deform, continues to crack, and it is just downright unsafe. We hired an arborist at our own expense to report on it, and she said it's a very symbiotic relationship between the tree and the wall. If one goes, the other one will go. And so if this broken, bent, cracked brick wall falls down, the tree is likely to follow very soon thereafter. And there's absolutely no warning of this. So I asked council, I've asked for a meeting on site so we could go through the details carefully. That was rejected. And it's just not good enough. Sooner or later, that tree will fall down and someone is likely to be killed. And so I bring it to council's attention again and suggest that possibly a brief on-site meeting with the responsible council staff would find a way to resolve this matter.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes. Are there any questions? of the speaker?
Yes. So I'm looking here on some information provided to me by council's tree team. It said they did some safety clearance pruning over the parking lane and the footpath. So that was done in February this year. So did that, are you aware of that? Did that help the problem that the branches were cut back?
Anything like that could help, but the problem is there is a very large branch, the largest branch in the tree, the lowest branch, which projects directly out from the property halfway across Shell Cove Road. And that's providing a huge destabilising force on the tree. That limb has not been removed and should be.
And so in essence, you're simply here asking that council have a look at it again.
Yes, and give me a chance to discuss it on site. Because I've been monitoring that tree for 10 years, because I'm worried if it falls and in the likely direction, it will land on top of my garage and our car, hopefully not while we're in it.
Yeah.
And so I have a very much a vested interest in this.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, councillor Walsh?
I hope this is okay, but you do have some technical experience in sort of this area, don't you?
I have a degree with honours in civil engineering.
Yeah.
I have a Masters of Engineering Science. I was from Sydney University. I worked my whole career in hydraulic engineering, civil structures. And I do believe I have more knowledge than not the tree officer. I doubt to have expertise in the matter of trees.
Yeah.
But concerning the retaining wall, I've not seen anyone who has any reasonable knowledge at all. And I'd just like to discuss it with them.
Okay, thank you.
I move an
Councillor
amendment.
Martin? We haven't got to the motion. If there are any other questions of Mr. McCowan? Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you. I move a motion.
Councillor Martin?
I've got a notice of motion here, councillor.
Then I will move an amendment.
Oh,
Councillor Gibson,
Thank you.
wish to move your motion.
yes, look, we've got a resident here telling us
If you
that.
put the motion first, and we'll see if there's a seconder.
Good, so the motion is that we take appropriate action, which first includes getting down there promptly. I'll add that in, the council takes appropriate action, including an immediate or prompt site visit, including a discussion with the neighbour. We can add that in there.
Well, it depends on whether you're intending that be the elected body or council staff, because if it is, then you need to refer for consideration to the general manager.
I don't think it needs to be the elected body unless
Then
perhaps.
could I
the
suggest that you
mayor.
say we refer it to the general manager for consideration of a site meeting?
All right.
We can't direct council staff.
Well, I think the general manager can, I think.
The general manager can, but we can't resolve for what operational staff are to do. We can resolve to direct the general manager, but nobody else.
Right, well, I think my words are pretty good then, that we take appropriate action. I
We'll
think
mix
they're
that
fine.
up.
I don't think we all need to be.
Is there a
huge about this.
seconder for councillor?
That we take action, whatever,
Gibson's
thank you,
motion?
councillor
Thank you,
Chorus, that we take action, I trust our staff will act on this, I think it's sad that this resident had been trying to talk to councillors for a long time and feels really worried by this tree, and it was very good that councillor Walsh did point out that this resident has particular expertise in this area, so if he's worried, I'm worried as well.
You'll have an opportunity to speak to your motion. I'll just need to go to councillor Mutton with his amendment.
The amendment I propose is that Council's Tree Preservation Officer prepare a report to council on the condition of the tree with recommendations as to what action be taken.
Again, we can't make, that would be an unlawful motion. We can refer it to the general manager with a request that.
Council refers it to the general manager because I'm looking for a specific conduct rather than.
Is there a seconder for councillor Mutton's motion? No, that's failed for the want of a seconder, so that leaves us with the substantive motion. Councillor Gibson, do you want to speak to it?
No, I'm happy just to put it forward, I mean, this, I want us to get down there and have a look and take action if necessary.
Are there any other speakers? In that case, I put the item, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. McCowan. That takes us to the balance of the agenda. The first item is 9.1 Environment Reference Group Minutes. That's moved by Councillor Berricky, seconded by Councillor Lavin. Is there any discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 9.2, Sustainable Transport Reference Group Minutes, moved by Councillor Welsh, seconded by Councillor Berricky. Is there any discussion? Councillor Welsh.
Investing in transportation infrastructure like highways and roads often leads to more people using those modes of transport, a phenomenon known as induced demand. This is particularly evident in road projects where freeway expansions intended to reduce congestion end up making car travel more attractive, leading to increased traffic and a return to previous congestion levels. This cycle often requires further expansions at the expense of residents, parking spaces, and trees, and don't we know it? In contrast, constructing cycle paths and improving pedestrian facilities occupies less space, costs less, and has a higher capacity than roads and highways. While walking and cycling infrastructure also generates induced demand, the outcomes are more beneficial. They result in healthier communities, safer streets, and a more efficient use of space. Increasing investments in walking and cycling infrastructure can help reduce the need for costly and land-consuming road expansions. West Street Cycling, Walking and Streetscape Upgrade Stage 1 has been completed, and I must say it is very impressive. It is a separated cycle path with beautiful plantings and a net increase in trees. Kudos to Max White and the whole traffic team for this great result. I'm looking forward to West Street Walking and Streetscape Upgrade Stage 2. I support the recommendation.
Thank you. And then Councillor Gibson.
I just had a comment. I wasn't at the meeting, but Councillor Walsh, who was chairing, might be able to fill me in on what the discussion was. So it's just a discussion on the phasing out of button activated pedestrian crossing phasing in North Sydney. I have to say, I don't know what the context was and whether that was taken seriously. I can't agree with this. When I'm in the city of Sydney, and it gives you some power being able to push the button, and then if you're getting a bit impatient, you might push it again and know that it's finally going to change and you'll get to walk across. I think with set phasing, it really encourages people to just take their chance and run across. So I certainly could not be in favour of progressing that idea.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? You should have your right to reply. No. I'll put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to 9.3, Wellington Peninsula Working Group Minutes. Moved by Councillor Berricky, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Is there any discussion?
Could I just ask a question? Thanks, Matt. Also, expressions of interest have closed for the Coaloda Cafe. Through you to the general manager, have we got any idea when we might get some answers on leasing that cafe out? It's been quite a long time. General manager.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I might have to pass this question through to the director. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Baker. I understand there's a report, there's interviews happening at the moment, and there's a report that's supposed to be coming to the November meeting of council in relation to the tenancy for Coaloda.
I just heard, is it true we've had a hard time attracting tenants there because the conditions are quite onerous? That's what I heard.
No, that's not my understanding.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Councillor Lamb.
Question for you. The report speaks of or mentions the dolphins in Berries Bay. There is a situation has developed whereby Transport for New South Wales has now called for tenders to manage those dolphins and a number of other dolphins. And the question is, Has council been briefed or had information on the precise terms of that tender and the impact it might have on various pay?
Through Madam Mayor, no, council hasn't been briefed.
Sure, that surprises you. That Transport for New South Wales have not briefed council.
I just love dealing with transport in New South Wales.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any more discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to 10.1 matters outstanding. Moved by councillor Berricky, seconded by councillor Lamb. Is there any discussion? Put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Takes us to item 10.2, councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. I've forwarded some suggested motions for the conference. And I'll just briefly read them out.
First one's on the.
What's on the screen, is it? Thank you.
Can't see, isn't about that?
That's all right. One is the return of public open space. That local government, New South Wales lobbied the state government to return land that is compulsorily acquired for major projects to the care and control of the local council when the land is no longer required for the purpose of major project construction, and that the land be returned in a condition that meets the standards required for the use of the land as recreation and public open space. The second motion is on affordable housing and planning. That local government New South Wales lobby the state government to implement mandatory inclusion rezoning to provide for a minimum percentage of social and affordable housing for any new housing projects for the life of the building or project.
Could I just have a spelling check? It's inclusionary, ARY, and then zoning, new word. It says inclusionary zoning. It's a dictation.
Oh, I did actually dictate this one to myself. Thank you, Mayor. And a third one on waste and recycling, that local government New South Wales lobby the state government to develop a waste process in order to support FOGO and an increase in recycling rates. And it works to provide additional processing facilities to meet the volumes of waste that will be generated once mandatory FOGO is introduced.
Thank you. And councillor, thanks. Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, first of all, I think there might be a bit of a typo in the first proposed submission. I haven't got it on the screen at the moment.
Return of public open space.
To the care and control of the local council, right? Care of control. For major projects to the care and control of the local council when the land is no longer required.
Yep. Yeah.
And sorry, I'd just like to foreshadow that I would also like to be putting up a motion to Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference.
Perhaps if you, before we have a formal motion with that incorporates all of them, if you would put yours forward.
Yes, it was, I haven't got the exact words though, Mayor, unfortunately, but it's involved the council decision on neighbourhood power sharing schemes, that using the exact words that in the council decision on that.
So if Councillor Berricky, you're moving those three that you have submitted, and would you include a motion in identical terms to that we've already resolved on in relation to neighbourhood power sharing, and that it be in terms of Local Government New South Wales lobby the state government to partner in, and then the rest of it can be as we've resolved, which is to promote community and neighbourhood power sharing.
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologise for not having the words.
Okay, and perhaps you would second Councillor Berricky's motion, Councillor.
I'll second that, yes.
Okay, moved by Councillor Burke. Do you have one?
Yes, Mayor, just a question. Can I please see the motion about inclusionary zoning on the screen?
It's spelled properly.
Yes, or similar would be worth putting in there. And Yeah, I mean, we could talk about for significant housing projects, if there's only 4 apartments or something, it becomes a bit of a challenge, but a minimum 10% type figure, is that something you considered or?
I do consider it, councillor Burke. The only reason I actually haven't put a number in there is that I think there might be a bit of debate on it, and we might be able to get something then higher than 10%. So that we should be able to have that discussion, and then on the floor at council at the meeting, do what might be acceptable to the delegates.
And Mayor, if I could just say again, reading this press release, they're proposing to designate 15%.
Yes.
So I would think 15% is
Is
more
that
around the number.
But probably not. Yeah. Not for the life building. Okay, is there any discussion on those? If that's, I will put the motion, which is that we submit those 4 motions to Local Government New South Wales. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried with councillor Lepouris against. That takes us to item 10.3, disclosure of pecuniary interest by councillors and designated persons. Is there a move? Moved by councillor Gibson, seconded by councillor Welsh. Any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, councillor representatives, councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I would propose that we nominate councillor Beregi and councillor Welsh onto the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee.
There are seconded for that motion, seconded by councillor Lamb.
No, I was just going to suggest it stays is.
Is there any discussion? No, I put the item, I put the motion. All those in favour? That's carried. All those against? That's with councillor Lepouris against. 10.5, customer feedback and complaints, January to June 2023. Is there a mover for the item? Councillor Beregi, seconded by councillor Gibson. Is there any discussion? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Reformation of the Design Excellence Panel for 2023 to 2024, 2024-25. Is there a mover for the recommendation in the confidential? Councillor, moved by councillor Beregi, seconded by councillor Lamb. Is there any discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Lepouris against. That's carried. 10.7 we have dealt with. 10.8 East Crescent Street shared space. Councillor Beregi.
I'll move that.
Seconded by councillor Gibson.
I just like to briefly speak to this. For those of us who obviously all been down there, it's a lovely little space. And I must say that it was very valuable to have all the discussions and the meetings on site that we had about the space before. So we actually took the community with us. I know not everybody's happy about everything, but I think the great thing about doing that is that people understand the decision-making process. It's out in the open. It was transparent. The mayor ran a very lively on-site meeting. And I think everybody got to have their say. It was very cordial. It was very civil. Everybody wants more public open space and more relief. But I must say it's a lovely, lovely space. And so I'd just like to thank the council staff for going to the efforts that they did. They took in all of the feedback. We had a couple of minor little changes, but I think that's the way we do community engagement, and it's the way that we come out with an outcome that the community appreciates the input and then enjoys the space that's created. So happy to move the recommendation, and thanks again to the council staff for all their work.
Councillor Johnson, did you wish to speak?
Yes, I do think this is a delightful initiative. It's only a tiny space, but I think whenever we can turn pieces of road into shared spaces, it's a great idea. And in my mind, I keep thinking of the Young Street Plaza and still how that is still used. All these little spaces get used, whether they're used for a long time or just for people sitting on a chair for a minute, or whether they're just enjoyed by people walking through them, like the Young Street Plaza is. You know, that's important. You don't have to sit and enjoy it. You don't have to sit in the space. You can just walk through it and think, oh, this is nice, a nice quiet space. So I agree with all of these initiatives. I think they're fabulous. The only negative feedback I've had is that some residents think they, because the car parking spaces have been, I know we didn't lose any, they've just been moved around. So a few people were a bit annoyed that they couldn't park as close to their homes as they once did. But I find parking issues do tend to sort themselves out. And the more of these shared spaces, the better. Bring them on.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Oh, Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to endorse the two previous speakers and say that I think this is a case study on how to handle a project of this kind. And it's wonderful that it's received such positive reaction from the community. I actually went to the coffee shop right opposite East Crescent Street in Blues Point Road and spoke to the proprietor there, and he welcomed it, saying it was great for business because he wasn't able to handle all the people coming in, and now he can sell his products to them, and they can just go across the road and have their lunch over there. Similarly, Blues Point Hotel were very positive about it as well. I think all round it's a win-win situation that we've created, and with the community consultation, it just shows that this is an example of how positively to conduct a project of this kind.
Thank you. Before I offer a right of reply to Councillor Beregi, I'd just also like to note that this was one of the last programs that former Planning Minister Rob Stokes initiated, and he was, in my view, a very fine planning minister. So that's all that I have to add to the general support around the table. Do you wish to accept the right of reply? Put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. That brings us to 10.9, the Willoughby Roads shade structures post-exhibition report. Councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation.
And seconded by Councillor Gibson.
I just want to make a comment.
Seconded by Councillor Burke.
He can second that. Councillor Burke can second that.
Councillor Gibson, you wish to speak?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to make, I think this all sounds like a really positive mood. Just looking at some of the comments there by business owners, that we really haven't taken any consideration into how these spaces might be used when it's wet or windy, and in winter when you've got heaters. I think I keep looking at other local government areas and what they're doing when they're doing outdoor dining structures, and they're actually moving to something that are a bit more permanent. If you even look down at Balmoral, the outside, the Greek restaurant there and the fish and chip shop, they've actually built up sort of a substantial structure so that the sides can be closed in really quickly when it rains or when it's windy. And I think we probably should be moving in that direction. We know when these plastic flaps are pulled down, they work okay, but after a year or so, they tend to start looking pretty disgusting. And I think if we could look at what other council areas are doing and just see if we should be moving to something more sturdy that really takes these concerns into account. They're very valid concerns by this shopkeeper.
Is there any other discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Councillor Lockwood is against. 10.10, hard surface roof control tender. Is there a mover? Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Beregi. Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.11, is there a mover? A mover for the item?
I'm happy to move it, and I also want to ask some questions.
Councillor,
I've got quite a few questions I want to ask.
is there a seconder for the recommendation, which is reception of the report? Councillor Lamb.
Good, I just wanted to ask some questions, seeing as we used to ask, when we used to have committee meetings, we used to discuss these in some detail. So just flicking through the first page, page 3 of 21. So I just note, so this amount, Cammeray Park, St Leonard's Park and Anzac Park, so we're up to 659,000 for that. When are we likely to get a decision on that one, General Manager?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the hearing has been deferred to the new year. I'd have to take on notice.
And I'm also just flicking through it. There's quite a lot just in residential streets, residential developments, which interest me. 107 High Street, $55,000. Can someone just tell me what that was about? It's just a
I'd have to take that one on notice.
Is there no, we usually have staff here who could answer that.
Well, we've heard, it was asked and answered. Have you got the next question?
Okay, well, I think this is the place to ask and answer our questions answered. That's why I've turned up tonight. The next one is, so if we can just have, if we can have details on what that one is about. 1 Hay Street, Neutral Bay, that's down, I guess that one right down over the restaurant there. Can that 122,000? Can I just get some details? I'm interested in what that fight was about. It cost us 122,000.
Madam Mayor, we'll have to take that on notice. Unfortunately, the legal counsel was not able to attend tonight.
Okay, that's fine. So that one. Again, just a residential one, 12A Carabella Street. I can't quite, it's in my strip, but I can't quite think where it is. Seems to be a residential development. We're up to $32,000 there. That's quite a bit of money. Can I find out just the detailed story on what that is? And Kirribilli Avenue, 75 to 77 Kirribilli Avenue. We're up to 62,000 on that. If I could just get some more details, what we're actually, what the problems are there and how our money's being spent. That's all. Thank you very much, General Manager.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion or question on the item? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to 10.12. The North Sydney and Victoria Redevelopment. Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Councillor Welsh, we've just had a mover and a seconder for item 10.12 and also the Victoria Redevelopment project update. Are there any questions? That in the absence of that, I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried with Councillor Mutton against. And that brings us to the notices of motion. The first is 11.1, Councillor Gibson.
Oh, good, thank you. This is the one I wanted to raise last week, and my research into raising matters of urgency does confirm that one can raise a matter of urgency without notice. It's up to the mayor to then, or the chair to decide whether it's urgent.
Councillor Gibson, are you moving your motion?
I'm just.
Please.
Yes, I'm just going to move that and
Is there a seconder for the motion?
and thank the staff for their information on that. I'm going to just let me grab my proper paper here. So I was just contacted by a concerned resident that doors and windows and things were being moved, and you know, sometimes if if there hasn't been a DA submitted, council can take some action there, but it's.
Do you wish to withdraw the motion considering the advice from council?
No, just
staff,
leave it
which
there.
is that there
I'm
is,
just accepting them,
but there is no immediate, what you're moving is to take immediate action to prevent the.
and the action's been taken, so I'm just going to acknowledge the information I've been given there.
Well, then perhaps that should be your motion, because the motion actually says take immediate action.
Yeah, and it's been taken, it's funny, I was going to do this as a matter of urgency, but it seemed to get done in the meantime, but that's great.
But
I'll just acknowledge the response there that the action's been taken. And to thank the officers.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak further on the item?
No.
Okay, I'm going to speak briefly from the chair. I'll be voting against this because the advice says is that there is no action the council can take, and the action the council can take to protect in relation to heritage was taken when we resolved to seek information as to whether an interim heritage order was needed or not. Could you take your seat? You've spoken and I have the floor. Oh, Councillor Gibson, take your seat.
Yes.
And turn off your.
Yes.
turn
Yes.
off
Yeah,
your-
I was still in the middle of
Well, you
speaking
have,
to
I
my
asked, had
motion.
you finished? And you said
I
yes.
hadn't finished, no, but doesn't, you, away you go.
And so for those reasons, I'll be
That's fine.
voting against it because this is a motion where we would be requiring action that cannot be taken. Thank you. Are there any other speakers? I'll give councillor back.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I've got this correct, the council can do nothing to stop this person because it's not a heritage listed, can do nothing about this.
Don't think compliant development plan system provides.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I'll speak, I'll have my right of reply. Council can do something and they did do something. Council can do something. They can go down there and have a look at what's happening, and that's exactly what they did. So I'm really glad that I raised this. Well, it should have been taken as a matter of urgency, but it wasn't. I don't know if more things have been removed, but council can do something and we've done it, and that's excellent. We can get down and have a look, because just the fact that council turns up and has a look gives warning to those homeowners that council are watching and they better not start doing anything else that they haven't got a DA approval for. But if council, as I said, council can do something, it has done something, and I just thank the council staff. I'm happy that it worked out.
Thank you. I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's lost. Councillor Gibson, you're next. We've dealt with.
We've done with the
11.2, 11.3 MLC centre change of use. Would you care to move your motion?
Yes, look, I note the,
Just if you would put the motion and we'll seek a seconder.
yes, I'm calling, well, I'll just read out my motion. The council have a councillor briefing on the intention to convert the MLC centre from commercial use to build to rent apartments.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Lapouris.
I just think we should have a briefing on this. It's a pretty interesting step in the long saga of the MLC building. I've been publicly quoted as thinking it's a rather clever idea to have build to rent apartments here. They're not going to be affordable apartments, obviously, but they'd be pretty low cost. They wouldn't have car parking, and they wouldn't need it because they'd be right near the metro line, probably right near someone's place of work, probably right near their child's school. I think it's a perfect place for people to actually live. We kill two birds with one stone here. We liven up the CBD and we provide extra apartments to rent, because we all keep hearing that we are in a rental crisis. It's not just lack of affordable housing, it's a lack of any places to rent. We have families not being able to just be able to, extend the leases on their rental properties because they're offered more money. We do have a rental crisis, and I think the idea of build to rent is a really interesting one, because I've been through this building on many occasions and it cannot be successfully converted into a commercial building that tenants would want to work in. So I think we should have a briefing on this. I think we should be informed. I only found out about it through the media, and the media ringing me. And I heard that we were strongly against it. The elected body hasn't really discussed it yet or even had any information on it. So I just think a briefing on this whole idea would be worthwhile. It's not urgent, just whenever we have time.
Is there any other discussion? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Takes us to your final motion, councillor Gibson, 11.4.
Yeah, and this is just about the timing
If you could move the motion.
okay, I'll just read the motion out. That the deadline to submit a notice of motion be extended from midday, the day after, but a day after council's regular meeting, to 5 p.m. the next day. So like for this meeting, it'll be 5 p.m. tomorrow. I think, and I'm in this situation.
Just before you do, is there a seconder for your motion? Councillor Forrest.
I'm in a position with this tonight. I want to get a few. I've had a really busy day. I've got a busy evening. I've got something on first thing in the morning. And I want to get some notices of motion in for the next meeting. I just think this deadline's a bit tight. I think we at least, at a minimum, we need the whole of the next day to get a motion in, because motions do come up from a council meeting and what someone said or what someone's heard. So I don't think it would be a big problem.
Thank you. If you could turn off your microphone, councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to ask a question of the General Manager, if I may.
Yes.
Could she give us some indication of the staff impact of this change to 5 p.m. deadline?
Through you, Madam Mayor, currently the executive leadership team has a meeting to run through the draft agenda tomorrow after the deadline. So we would have to look at how that impacts then the flow and effect of that review process.
Councillor Berkey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be voting against this. The purpose of having fortnightly meetings is that there is a 2-week window. So even if you are unable, due to whatever reasons, unable to meet the midday deadline tomorrow, you have the next meeting in 2 weeks' time to be able to get those motions in. And if it is really urgent, there is also a motion of urgency available as well. Could I speak, please? Thank you. And one of the reasons, and this is very different to how it was with monthly meetings, where sure, you were able to get the motions in, but it was a very different routine. And so I think I've just heard what the General Manager said. This would absolutely interrupt the workflow of the staff who now have to get an agenda out for the next meeting on Thursday. So if we push our deadline out to 5 o'clock, it means that doesn't get to the next day, and that puts enormous pressure on the staff when it is not necessary. As I said, we had monthly meetings. We now have fortnightly meetings, so you actually have double the opportunity to get yourself ready to get motions in. I think they're working exceptionally well, and if anything is super urgent, there is always motions of urgency, so I won't be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Are there any takers?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I do find it a little challenge to get a motion in by midday the next day. Sometimes it's reliant on the meeting you had the night before, and you do want to get something in there. So I don't know if there's a compromise we could reach here to make it 2 p.m. And move that somewhere to the end.
Can we just ask if this is possible?
So somewhere towards the end of lunchtime, so as to provide a middle ground where
Are you
we.
moving an amendment to 2
Yes,
p.m.?
I am moving an amendment to 2 p.m. Mayor.
Is there a second one for the amendment? Councillor Wood.
2 p.m.
Yeah, the reason, thank you, Mayor. The reason I suggest two PM is because it gives just that extra hour or two to get something prepared, and it also should allow our staff to have their afternoon meeting at 2:30, 3 o'clock. A good couple of hour meeting if they need to, so perhaps that provides some way forward as a.
I'm happy to take that on, think that, because otherwise it's going to go down anyway. So I'm happy to make it
Councillor
2
Gross, you
o'clock.
seconded.
And thank you for that, councillor.
Is there any further discussion?
Attempting to be conciliatory.
I'll put the motion, which is now to 2 PM. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. And now that brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you all for participating.